And welcome back to Retrospect My Fantasy, where we are currently taking a look at the Final Fantasy franchise from beginning to end, taking a look at it with a slightly critical eye. Now, before we get actually into the game, let us talk about a couple things. Number one is that we are partners with Humble. So, if you take this link right there, that'll get you to the Humble homepage where you can check out some of the amazing Humble bundles. Go to the Humble store where you can look at all the stuff that they have on sale, maybe pick out an awesome game that you love or that you want to buy for somebody else. Or you can sign up for Humble Monthly, which is a subscription-based service similar to like Loot Crate or BarkBox, except for video games, directly to your PC. All of which are great services, support amazing charities, and by using that link, you also help support this channel. Let them know that I sent you and that you are willing to help me out. So that is announcement number one. Announcement number two is that on March 31st, which is a Saturday, starting at noon, we're going to have ourselves a bonus stream and giveaway where I will be playing Telltale's The Walking Dead: A New Frontier. I'm going to be giving away a copy of said game, as well as a copy of Psychonauts, and 3 $20 gift cards. And there's only a couple rules for winning as well. Just, we'll go over that right now, just a little bit of advance. Rule number one, you have to be a follower in order to win. Rule number two, you have to be in the chat in order to win. Because when I say your name, I'm going to give you about a minute to send me a DM, and that'll let me know that you're actually interested in winning it. Otherwise, we will re-roll and see if somebody else wants it. You can turn it down if it's something you're not interested in, like if you already own Psychonauts. Obviously, you can't have 2 copies in your Steam library. So if you already own a copy of one of the games, you can decline it and you'll be moved on to whatever the next giveaway is. So, with all that out of the way, let's get back to the game. So, let's see here. What happened yesterday? Yesterday, Snow showed back up in the picture with a woman who goes by the name Feng, and started attacking the Sanctum's army in Palamporum. I think that's what it was called. The city is called. And then Lightning and Fang went off together, and Snow and Hope are going off together. So it's been interesting. They're supposed to meet up at Hope's dad's house.
Felix Heights is that way, right?
But we'll see what happens. As Hope has an existential crisis for not stabbing
Still pretty
Snow.
Far. A great place for family living. So they say.
So,
Looks like it actually might be, huh?
during most of this playthrough so far, we've been going over various topics as I see them. Not.
I barely got to know my family.
It's all been.
Someday I'm gonna have my own.
From my point of view, in these various topics like game development, games journalism, storytelling, just things that are vaguely related to what's going on, but not directly involving the Final Fantasy series whenever possible.
Hard to help someone that's trying
and
to
so today's topic
It'll be tough.
for existential discussion is
as long as we stay
old
together
games
and hold on to hope.
We don't have any.
versus new games in general. Obviously, as we go through some of these franchises, we're looking at some of the specific changes made to each franchise, but
Felicity's only hope is a quick death.
Wow. It's pretty harsh. So,
Hold on to hope.
one of the biggest criticisms of modern video games tends to be that they're too easy. And I think that's a load of bunk. And here's why. We'll just get this right out of the way, because it's usually the biggest thing that people talk about when it comes to old versus new games. And that is that old games weren't hard to be hard, first off. They were difficult because they were new. It was a whole new concept, this video gaming thing. Also, they were working with limitations, and they weren't worried in the same way that they are now about niche, about like market, the widest market share possible. Because at the time, there was Atari and Nintendo and Sega, but really, there was only Nintendo. The Master System didn't do well in America. And Atari was older than the Nintendo. So really, there was the Nintendo for a long time. Unless you want to get into arcade games. But arcade games were actually made artificially more difficult, specifically to make more money by eating up your quarters.
It's all about teamwork.
But the reason why I think new games aren't necessarily easier is that we, as video gamers, have been playing video games for... Hell, I've been playing video games since I was 5 years old. So 25 years. Over the course of 25 years of doing anything, you get a certain amount of... I don't really know what to call it other than literacy for a thing. And there certainly is gaming literacy, and video gamers who have been playing games for a long time have it. So, games have less that they need to do in order to A, get us online with whatever the game is doing. We get it. In fact, we've been getting it for a rather long time. And this is the most important thing, we have a lot of built-up skills around hand-eye coordination, problem-solving, tropes, that we didn't have 10, 15 years ago.
Thanks,
Or
Wonder.
longer, depending on... Wow, that really messed Hope up. And so that is why, in short, I don't think video games are easier now than they were. We are just better at playing video games. Now, if you want to accuse video games of anything, what I would say is accessibility. They specifically tried to make video games that are... I don't want to use the word easier, because I don't think they're actually easier, but are geared towards trying to bring new players in. That is specifically what they're trying to do. Come on. Wow. Wow. Freaking chain guns, man. Or Gatling guns. Even with relatively high stats, we can't do them. And it's not like this is like a boss or a mini-boss or anything like that. This is just a regular enemy. Can't beat it. No, not all. Can't easily beat it. Despite everything else being pretty easy for our characters. But they want to make things as accessible as possible. I mean, for pretty simple reasons. The more accessible a game is, the simpler it is to grasp the early concepts of a game, the easier people will have in getting into the game. And ultimately, in the long run, that is a good thing. Having more people playing games is a good thing. Because what that does is it opens up the video gaming community to various other stories. For instance, right now, with a few exceptions, video games are primarily about violence. Because violence is one of the easiest ways to express the stories that video gamers want, or that game writers want to tell. But that's not to say that's the only story. So, for instance, right now, we are playing... There it goes again. We are playing a...
Not yet.
Well, I would call this a reluctant hero. It's not a hero of 1,000 faces, but it's a reluctant hero tale. No, we got this. Just got to be a little smarter. This is a... I guess this would mostly just be a reluctant hero story.
Time to switch, kiddo.
Alright, Snow. Snow and Hope, come on, buddies. And we've... In video game culture, we've had... Let's see, we've had a lot of action stories. We've had a lot of rescue stories. We've had a lot of horror stories. And we get the occasional love story. We really haven't had a good example of existential dread. Because existential dread is a very... Hey, Kassan! Is a very difficult thing to get across in an interactive medium. Because how do you make a player feel existential dread? It's easy to make a character undergo existential dread, but how do you make a player undergo existential dread? That's something a bit more difficult. Certainly not impossible, just more difficult. And a lot of the potential stories that exist out in the world are doable by video games, but not easily. And that is why they go for accessible storylines, easy to digest storylines.
How about this?
That
Try that on me.
get everyone on board with what's going on. So I would argue that video games are more accessible and thus seem easier because they're trying to make video games for the lowest common denominator, but that does not necessarily, which means the base level is lower, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the nuance and difficulty doesn't ramp up to some of those older games that were mainly made out of limitations. That's why a lot of those games were as difficult as they were. See, just a little bit of creativity, we're able to beat it. The most notable example, this is something that me and my friends have talked about on a semi-regular basis, is that during the regular Nintendo era, there was video games actually had a problem. It's going pretty well. In that, first off, video games were accessible to no one. Like, how do you comprehend the story of Mario? So we have a guy who runs and jumps. He jumps on people's heads, eats mushrooms that make him grow bigger, and collects gold coins.
How about this?
And sometimes he grabs a flower that makes him spit fire.
How about this?
And we're rescuing a princess, and we only actually know this once we get to the end of World 1, or 1-3, 1-4. God, how many levels were there in each world in Mario? I want to say it was 4. But when we get to the end of that, and Toad tells us, "I'm sorry, Mario, but the princess is in another castle." That is the first time that we really know that we're rescuing a princess? I mean, maybe rescuing, maybe we're just... Maybe she's lost? Maybe we're lost?
Just too easy.
We don't know. But how you doing?
Come and get it.
So that was effectively incomprehensible from a storyline perspective from regular Mario. Like, the floor of the button of the controls is pretty low. It's... You have directions, and then you have a jump button. But one thing that you need to learn very early on is that if you hold the jump button,
How about this?
you can run.
Later.
But they don't ever tell you that. That is something you just have to learn on your own. So already there's a subtlety of an advancement. But you need to learn that skill, because I don't think you can actually make the first gap without the running jump. I could be wrong on that. I could easily be wrong on that. That's just my recollection. It's been a way too long. Actually, no, I should say that. It's not been too long. It's been a very long time since I've played original Mario. That game is not worthy of... That's not true. It is worthy of playing. It's just... It does not hold up over time. But a lot of early games were like that. So, back in the day, actually up until I bought my PlayStation 2 when I was 13, using babysitting money, I had a regular Nintendo. And what this meant for me, 109, 113. I don't know what defense maintenance means, but it sounds fine.
Leave this to me.
But with only having a regular Nintendo, I also had very few games. I had Mario Duck Hunt combo. I had Battletoads for some god-awful reason, because that game is hard as hell. I had Bionic Commando, which took me a long time to beat, but I did. Is that it? Oh, I had Ninja Turtles 1 and Ninja Turtles 3. Where's my... There it is. So, I had very few games growing up as a kid. Up until I got jobs doing like babysitting and stuff like that, and then or when I got my first actual job and started making money and could buy some for myself.
Thanks, Hope.
So, like, I spent a lot of time playing those so-called hard games. And some of them were ridiculously hard. Battletoads? That is one of those... There's a term that me and some of my friends use when discussing some of those older games. And we call that... Or games on that same level as, like, Battletoads. And we call them NES Impossible.
How about this?
And it's not to say that those games are impossible, it's just they're so difficult that you're unlikely to beat them. And they seem difficult on purpose. Battletoads does not seem to me like a game that you're meant to beat. It seems like a challenge. Now, obviously it is beatable. People have beaten it. But... But that does not necessarily mean that it was meant to be beaten. Just because a game has a win condition does not mean you are meant to win. On the other hand, Bionic Commando, difficult game for a kid, not impossible. Except for the last level, which was nothing but a timing moment where you had to shoot the bazooka weapon through the windshield of a, I'm presuming what was supposed to be a Hind, because it was just a massive air gunship. You had to shoot through the windshield to hit the enemy commander on this long-ass jump. Which, at the time, I thought was extraordinarily innovative, and to a degree it still is, especially considering the time frame that game's coming out, but it was not the same as Battletoads. Battletoads is one of those games that I think will pretty much forever be in infamy for being near impossible with good reason. It kind of deserves that. Yeah, I'll give them that. But newer video games aren't necessarily easier. And here's actually the worst part. There's the Dark Souls thing going on right now, where games are actually now becoming... Game developers are deciding to make games artificially difficult thanks to Dark Souls. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That if people want difficult games, give them the difficult games, but...
Anytime.
Christ.
Time to switch, kiddo.
But...
Thanks, partner.
I don't think that you need to be making your game difficult just for difficulty's sake. If you want to make a game difficult, give it a reason. Make it part of the story. Make it part of your character's struggle, or... I don't know. Make it a world that is just hostile, and not to you, towards everything. The NPCs, you, the enemies you're fighting against, make them fight against each other more frequently. If you want to make a game artificially difficult, just for the sake of difficulty, don't. Then again, I'm a big proponent of narrative, so... we are totally screwed. Yep. Good old Final Fantasy 13, where you die when you lose when your leader goes down, despite having a whole nother character that might be able to do something. Now, one thing that I will say that older video games definitely had over newer video games is creativity. Because they were... We'll start
Follow
here.
my lead.
Because they had to... had very few resources at their disposal, they had to be more creative in how they were going to accomplish all their tasks. I mean, just look at... Mario was not supposed to be the way it is. But, because of the limitations that they had available to them... Crap. Well, time to guard up. God damn.
Try that on me.
That hurts. No. Kill that guy. So this fight is particularly nasty. That's fine. We got it. Especially since Hope can heal like a mofo.
Thanks, partner.
But a lot of people say that older video games were just better than newer video games. And I wonder if a significant amount of that is based in nostalgia. Because they were more creative, usually, but just straight better?
Hope, follow my lead.
I don't know. There's a lot of things that couldn't exist without modern technology in video gaming. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people forget, is that through the advancements of taking these big giant steps over the years, that we really have come a long way in, like, we've developed our own tropes, we've developed our own language, we've figured out how controllers should be shaped. Like, God, who remembers the freaking rectangular prism of the regular Nintendo? And at the time it was comfortable because that's all we had. We didn't know any better. But God, go back to that thing now. It's actually kind of painful. As far as the games themselves, games tend to be more buggy, but the bugs tend to be less debilitating. I mean, they're more buggy because there's just so many more systems involved. I mean, most games have somewhere between 3 and 5 different engines handling different things. Usually they'll have either Havoc or Source handling object physics, and then Unreal or the Cry engine handling like AI and environmentals, and then they'll have something else taking care of some other issue that they need. So video games have become quite complex, and most of these things aren't built in-house anymore, unless, of course, you're talking about the company id, but, you know,
Follow my lead.
of course they make their own engine. It's definitely an interesting thing to consider. Like, are video games today worse than old video games? I don't think so. Exceptionally different? Sure. Worse?
We can handle this.
I'd argue that one. I'd argue that till I'm blue in the face. I definitely think that, like all portions of the media industry right now, that creativity is lacking in the video game industry. And I think that companies are in the AAA industry. And I think some of these companies should probably just do something small. Set themselves a small restriction. Like the like however long the average story for that genre is in terms of pages. Add another 50%. Make that a requirement of your writing staff. There needs to be an additional 50% more story to whatever this genre would normally be. And this would be for something like a Call of Duty game. Go ahead and add another 50% story. Now, that 50% story on a game that has such a heavy texture, usage as like a Call of Duty, in order to make them seem more realistic, is going to be rough on the programming team. But probably worth it in the end. I think a lot of video game companies could do with a lot of small restrictions like that, just to try and break something up. I mean, here's the thing, they don't even have to do it for their main project. They could be like, okay, so this is, we're going to take the Call of Duty team and we're going to give them half the budget of Call of Duty, and they're going to have to work on totally not Call of Duty with story. And they can't use microtransactions and, like, just set smaller things, like, and you can't use multiplayer to pad out your God, what is it that I'm thinking of? Not your runtime. But your marketing experience. You can't use multiplayer to pad out your marketing experience.
Thanks, partner.
Or your playtime. That way, like, you start getting into, like, actually trying to change some of the things in the industry. Because without making the attempts to change, it won't.
It's me you want.
Or very slowly, at least. For, like, Nintendo made changes to the Mario series because they had to.
You see
They
that?
had to. There's no way. I mean, hell, I can't remember who was the guy in America that decided that
Time to switch, kiddo.
or Mario 2 would not make it. Like, Mario 2 was not a good enough game to actually do it, to make it in this market.
Oh, follow my lead.
So they took Doki Doki Panic
How about this?
and reskinned it and called it Mario 2. And it turns out it's all a dream, except it's also all canon. At least the Birdo and the Birdo part turned out to be canon. And then Mario 3 happened, and they decided to also make that a story, but the story is that it's a play. It's not actually Mario and Luigi running around doing all those things. It's actors in the Mushroom Kingdom playing Mario and Luigi.
How about this?
Brilliant. Dumb, but brilliant. And that's because they needed to come up with new ideas to try and sell this game, because they couldn't just rest on the original Mario.
How about
They,
this?
especially after Mario, the original Mario 2, or as we got it, Lost Levels, which was just more
Just too easy.
more difficult levels. Like, that didn't sell well here in the States, because it was the same game. But we've become complacent. We like the games that we like, and we don't want them to change. I mean, I don't like this game, for instance, but I'm glad that that Square keeps trying new things. It's better than just sitting there doing nothing. I'm trying to think of an
wanted to ask
example
you
where an
something.
old game
that?
in a franchise,
You say you want a family.
or an old
What if-
section of a franchise,
What if they were
was
taken from
strictly better.
Well then, I take them back.
you? And what if you couldn't? What if you knew who was to blame?
Well then, there'd be trouble. Hey, are you okay? Did you get hit in the head or something?
First I was thinking Zelda, but no, that's definitively not true. The early Zeldas were kind of shit up until the Super Nintendo.
Don't just stand there.
Same thing with Mega Man.
Wait!
Hey, let's get ourselves some bonus defenses. The Mario games have been pretty solid throughout their entire run. Oh. No, because a lot of people really like most of the new Metroids. Castlevanias were definitely not as good as their early Castlevanias. Definitely not as good as their later counterparts. For the most part, the Final Fantasies are better nowadays.
How about this?
That ability almost hurt. I really can't come up with a franchise whose games, off the top of my head at least, whose games were much better back in the day than, like, back in the Super Nintendo to regular Nintendo era, that don't have either equally good or better sections of their franchise that are around in modern day. I would say that definitely a lot of the definitive games in particular franchises come out of the past. But I believe that's mostly nostalgia.
Thanks, partner.
I mean, what would you rather play? Castlevania 1? Or...
Thanks, Hope.
oh crap, why does my mind always fail me when it comes to naming things? Symphony of the Night. Which is better? I would say that if anybody said that that they would rather play Castlevania 1 over Symphony of the Night, that they're lying. Or they really don't remember Castlevania 1. This guy's got a lot of hit points.
How about this?
Same thing with, like, final, like... Final Fantasy 3, like real 3. Is real 3 better than
Well, come on.
7? No. No. Definitely not.
Thanks, partner. Thanks, Hope.
So I don't get where the people talk about the older games being better, because as a whole they were worse. Like, you'll find individual games here or there that are definitely better. Like Mario 3 is personally one of my favorite Mario games. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it was better than Mario 64 or Sunshine or Galaxy. So it's kind of an interesting thing to talk about, because every time that this subject gets brought up,
How about this?
people usually immediately default to, well, the older games were better. Were they? Oh, shit. Hope, why do you always take a dive? And please heal Snow up. He could really use it before he gets his butt whooped again. Crying out loud.
It's all about teamwork.
So this is a real doozy of a fight. This is definitely... I think it's... So, this team-up is not a very good team-up as compared to our last two sets of teams. And I think that is coming back to bite me in the ass right now. All my bitching about Snow is coming back to bite me in the ass. Alright, time to build up our defenses again.
Thanks, partner.
I'd like to know what you guys think, though. Like, you've heard me talking about this for the last
Thanks, Hope.
half an hour or so. What are your guys' thoughts on older games versus newer games? I also typically tend to group, as opposed to generations by what we would call the console generations, I typically tend to group things by into one of four categories.
Thanks, partner.
I tend to go to old 2D versus newer 2D, so that would be like regular Nintendo and earlier, and then Super Nintendo and later, in terms of 2D gaming systems. And then early 3D, which is like the PlayStation through probably the Dreamcast, maybe the PS2, depending on your perspective, and then through the Xbox. That's the breakout point. Through the Xbox, and then the 360 to modern, to like now. That's how I personally prefer to group things, because I think it's more telling about those generations. Because that's also where you see most of the various like major departures from certain techniques and tropes and I mean it's not a flawless breakup, but it is something. Woo. Snow getting in some good damage. Almost. Come on, Hope. Thank you.
How about this?
Yeah, we got this. We got it now. There we go. It's a lot of cryogen. Ooh, an abominable wing.
Oh, yeah!
Snow is so proud of himself.
If you need to take a break, why don't we do it over there? Here.
He doesn't just punch his way into vending machines? What?
Okay.
Wasted my money?
Well, don't want to waste it.
This is your chance. Stab him.
Mommy? Mommy?
Oh, that felt good.
I can't.
I did not, however, I know a couple people who have worked at Telltale in the past.
Save Sarah.
And so your
protect
brief
Cocoon,
synopsis is
have
definitely
myself a big
a
happy
story that
family.
I've heard multiple times
Still,
from
it's a long road
those
ahead.
people who worked at Telltale.
Maybe not so long. Whatever happens, things will work themselves out. Even if you're Lassie, you gotta keep fighting.
Yeah.
And what if that gets people around you involved?
What?
What happens when your actions end up ruining someone's life? What if someone dies? What then, Snow?
Snow has to deal with his consequences!
How do you pay for what you've done?
I can't!
All right.
There is nothing that can make something like that right again. When someone's dead,
Were you
someone's
secretly the
gone,
writer, Slade?
words are useless.
So that's it? People die and you just run away?
I know! It's all my fault. I don't know how to fix it. Where do you start? What do you say? All can
I was
do
asking if
is
you
go
were the one that wrote the article.
keep fighting and surviving until I find the answers I need.
There are no answers! You're running from what you deserve!
Well, why don't you tell me what I deserve?
The same fate! Ah!
Stabbing time.
Nora Estime. She was my mother. And she died because of you!
You're the one she meant.
Well,
Oh!
so much for Hope's revenge. Oof. Ooh. Crates! God, we should start a 0 to crate. If you don't know, there's a common trope in video games that many streamers and people who write articles and whatnot about video games bring up is one of the most used assets in video game history is crates. And so there's a game that you can play, which is your zero to crate. The longer it takes you to get to crate, the better your game is.
Let's give up. Forget our focus. We don't need it.
We don't need it? Look, if we don't figure it out and pull it off, you're gonna be a thief.
It's just making a kid that young, Alyssa. It's not right.
Yeah, it's unfair. But guess what? We grin and bear it like good lassie, or the Falsey starts making more. Like that girl the other day. It doesn't matter what our focus is. We do it, whether we like it or not.
But
Say we call it quits. You think these people will let us go? They'll lynch us in the street. Listen, Vanille. We do what
Yeah, I
we
didn't
gotta
want to
do
call you out
and
as
get
being
ourselves off this filthy world
the
as fast
individual,
as we
but
can.
who, that I
You
knew
get
that
out
worked
of
at
here
Telltale.
first. I'll buy you some time.
But
Now, don't you worry. I'll come and find you, no matter where you go.
oh, Fang. What is your relation to Vanille that makes you so protective of her?
please, don't leave me.
Oh,
I'm not gonna
well,
do this.
there's that.
You boys coming or not? Your fight's right here! By the time I took care of them all, Vanille was long gone. After
I
that,
told her to run.
Rains and his cavalry found me. I never stopped searching for Vanille, but I couldn't find her. Her or our focus.
So, you're telling me Sarah will come back to life someday too?
Yep. We didn't do our job right.
Yep. Soldiers right up
That's
there.
why it made her a lessee. We messed up. Sorry.
Oof. That's one hell of a hit.
That it?
You sure better hope so. But whether we're square, that's up to Sarah.
You sound exactly like Snow. And he didn't hit me.
Wait, he already knows this?
Wow. That's a load off. Glad I apologized.
You apologized so you'd feel better?
Guess so. How about you?
I like Fang.
Feel any better now that you hit me?
I also like Lightning. So this is a good team up.
It didn't change anything.
Huh. Tell that to my jaw.
Felix Heights is up there.
The worst part about that is that
Still a ways before we get to
it's not
Hope's
like it's an
place.
isolated incident. That is
Better pick it up.
a relatively common tale
We'll head through that gate.
in the
Right.
industry, from my understanding, is that a lot of companies, it's not that they don't know how to treat people, it's that
I
they,
know about this.
from my understanding, thanks to extra credits, it's that a large number of companies in the industry believe, or managers for companies in the industry, believe that their employees are lucky to be working in the industry, and they should just take whatever they're given as far as projects, pay, benefits, because really the company's doing them the favor.
Bring it on.
And that there, even according to extra credits, needs to be a massive overhauling in the system used to manage in the industry. Alright, let's get rid of this guy and his freaking rocket launcher. But seeing as how I've never worked in the industry, and all the stories I've heard are anecdotal, by virtue of the fact that they're stories that I've heard. Honestly, if you want a take on the industry from longtime insiders, I would definitely look up Extra Credits. Many of them have been working in the industry for a very long time, and they have a lot to say about some of the changes that need to be made. And just in general, they do a very good job at getting the information out there. So are we done with... Look at her grow. Good. Good. Honestly, the game industry, I know a lot of... We consider computer programming to be
sacrifice the city
not
if
this,
that's what it takes to catch us.
but it is totally a trade skill. Game design and programming is totally a freaking trade skill, and they should unionize. Yeah, I saw a couple of... there's a puppy! I saw a couple of posts online, and I kind of figured it was something to that effect, but I didn't know if it was an actual, like, organization or just another one of those movements that you see pop up on Twitter occasionally. And I saw it at work, and by the time I got home, I'd forgotten about it because I was getting ready to do my stream. Most definitely. So, as far as Lightning being a Ravager, I do thoroughly enjoy the fact that a significant portion of her moveset is still just hitting things with her sword.
Hardly worth the effort.
Good for them.
Felix Heights is this way.
Well, let's murder a man and then his robot friend. Hey there, man. You know, if it meant being killed by the protagonists of a fantasy storyline in order to have a robot friend, I think I'd take that. Especially a giant robot friend. Alright, time to heal up. Metagard. Ah, it's a healing guard. Awesome. Although I'm not sure if I would ever join a totalitarian dictatorship solely to have a robot friend. I think that one's crossing the line. Even if the ruler of said dictatorship was a psychotic clown bent on destroying all reality. Even if that were the case, I don't think I could fall in line just for a robot friend. Ooh, we got a new weapon. Picking those up like crazy these days. Improved counter. I don't know. Dang it. So that's done. That's done. Yeah, that's done. Yeah, I don't think lightning makes a very good medic. That's not exactly her skill set. Hold on here. Alright, let's take on this behemoth.
Not our lucky day.
Let's start with Saboteur and Medic, I guess. Alright, so slow. Is that the only hindering it? Yes, apparently it is.
Change of plans.
That's something, I guess. It doesn't really matter if it attacks like a bastard. Hey, that's not cool.
You looking at me?
I also wish the game was a little bit smarter about the actions that the characters perform, but whatever. It is what it is, right? Damn, that hurts. Lodestar Behemoth. Yeah, I think he might already be provoked, actually.
Come on then. Cheers.
Alright. Christ. That hurts. Nope, 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 nope. So we need to make a new paradigm.
This'll be fun.
Come on. There we go. Let's take him down. Or not. What now? So first off, let's do this. So is he... He seems to be immune to slow. Interesting. Oh, maybe not anymore. Maybe we were able to get rid of it finally after like 4 castings. God damn. So what else do I have to say about... I thought the talk about old video games versus new video games would have... I would have more to say about it, but... Not really. It's kind of sad, really. I mean, I've had so long to think about this subject that I actually don't have very much to say on it. Does not seem to care about provoke. That's for damn sure. There we go. Although I am still very curious if you guys have any thoughts about old video games versus new video games. I mean, I've kind of talked fairly exhaustively on the subject, as far as my views are concerned. This guy, he hurts. He hurts bad. Well, might as well use up that experience whenever we get it. Or not, you know, whatever. But if it doesn't get, if it's not gonna get us anything, who cares? We'll just throw it out the window. Ooh, some sort of event thing is gonna happen here.
Okay, let's get Snow on the line.
Another cell phone call?
Damn thing's still jammed. Ugh, he can take care of himself.
We'll just have to believe that.
That's a good line.
Hey, Fang.
Hmm?
The others are safe, right? If any of us got caught, they'd make an announcement.
Yeah, they would. They'd have to let everyone know that the big bad Lassie can't hurt him no more. These Cocoon people, bunch of cowards and blowhards.
These Cocoon people have spent centuries under Fal'Cie law, in constant fear of a Pulse invasion. If it weren't for Sarah, I'd have been out there too, hunting Lassie. Would have been nothing but targets to me.
Well,
How different of a game would that be?
Just as twisted. Cocoon's a floating nest of vipers, ready to strike. Or so I thought.
Well, I mean,
So you
lightning
became a
did hit
Lassie
you
to
pretty
fight
hard.
the Vipers. And destroying the nest is your... Huh. I mean, our focus now.
You don't know that.
Until we woke up here, we'd been in crystal stasis. Which means we must have completed our first focus. Why can't I remember that part? My childhood's clear as day.
Still have
The
some
one
issues with
thing
the
I need.
eyes.
It's just gone.
They're definitely way better than 10.
Blank. Like an empty page.
And this is definitely a lot closer to 10 in terms of art style
I
than
reach for
12,
memory,
but
and nothing's there. Then there's my brand. It's all messed up. Vanille and me, we lost our past and our focus.
And now, you want to find them?
well, wouldn't you want to find your past if you lost it?
Be a Pulse Lassie.
Have you checked under the
An
couch
enemy of
cushions?
Cocoon?
I mean, that's typically where things
Pulse and
get lost
Cocoon
in
can rot for all I care.
our world.
If I don't figure out our focus soon,
Or did you put it on a shelf, or maybe in a
needle's gonna be
drawer
a seed.
somewhere?
I'll
That's
tear
typically
down
where I
the
lose
sky
something.
if
I'll put it
it'll
in a
save
drawer
her.
somewhere and forget that I did that and find it like a year later. Which obviously meant it wasn't that important because I gave up on finding it. Ooh, Blitz. What? I was also considering, on top of making... on top of making one for, doing... Medic and Commando. Oh. My thought process is that they are what they are. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. But it's not necessarily that all old games are better than all new games, like a lot of people think. They're just different, and...
Cut through the passage up ahead. We'll be in the residential district.
I could fight those guys, or I could come up here and get this. Nope. Can't get that item. They want to stop me.
Show no fear.
The games are what they are, new or old, but I definitely think the ground level on video games, the entry level, is definitely lower than it used to be. But I also think that the ceiling on video games is a lot higher than it used to be. With a couple of exceptions, something like Battletoads, which is impossibly hard, and actually not really all that good. Oh god, yes. The tools thing is definitely a big deal. I went over, while you weren't here, I went over the fact that newer games tend to be more, have more glitches, but the glitches tend to be
Follow my lead.
less debilitating. Ho 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 ho! Fang, you are totally fucked. Lightning. Because new games have multiple systems going on simultaneously.
Cheers.
Like they'll usually have a graphics engine, a physics engine, an item engine. Damn, that hurts. And with the exception of id and whoever make, I guess Ubisoft now, whoever makes the Cry engine, most companies don't make the engine that they work in. I guess Bethesda continues to manufacture the Havoc engine, so there's a couple of companies that still make the engine that they use, but most games just license out Unreal, Havoc, or Source. And not even necessarily the whole thing. They'll do bits and pieces. Like they'll they'll get the models and shaders from Unreal, and then they'll get the physics from Havoc, and they'll pick up something else from some other company, and like an indexing system or something like that. Like, that's why the opening credits to video games nowadays have like 30 freaking companies on the front. It's because they have to give credit to every company that made a tool that they used for completing the game. That's not that big of a difference. You worked on an engine? Or you worked for a company that worked on their own engine?
Hey, Lightning.
Call me Light.
Did you see Vanille's brand?
No.
No, huh? Want to know how long
Oh, nice.
until it's Seath City? Just look at your brand. You start getting more arrows, and then finally an eye. Once it opens all the way, you're done. Let's have a look. Don't be shy.
Okay.
Nowhere near. You got time.
Gotcha.
Still, you never know. Some people, doesn't take so long. You get a nasty shock, it can speed up the process. Vanille's brand must be pretty far along by now. I gotta save her and get her home.
Yeah, I guess that's technically the industry term, isn't it? Middleware?
To
For all those
Grand
small
Pulse.
systems.
I hear that the Sanctum prevents people from leaving Cocoon. I'd like to see him try and stop me.
So, that's your plan.
Hmm?
Wish I had one. Without Sarah, without a future, there's nothing to plan for. There's no way out of this
Gotcha.
mess, and no way to fight it. I'm stuck trading blows with the Sanctum, but that's no plan. Even if we topple the government, where's that leave us? With nothing to fight for, I might as well be dead.
Wow.
Sister,
That's quite the statement that she just threw out there.
you've got plenty to fight for. Think about it. Don't you want to see Sarah after she wakes up?
In
That's
how
your
long?
future right there. All you gotta do is survive. It's simple.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Order
They
1886
found
had
it.
to have their own because... Okay. So, a lot more than you just see around there. Yeah. Order 1886 had to have their own because, well, they were doing a lot with textures and lighting that, like, they were devoting a lot to their textures, lighting, and modeling, so... Wow! Holy crap, something actually hurt Snow? But I've seen bullets bounce off those abs. Are we in for another flashback? What? Come on. Naughty Dog. Okay. Do they? Okay. I knew that they definitely used to.
Transfer request will not be granted. Violators will be treated as enemy combatants.
Oh, I guess that's true, yeah. If they have their own engine, they don't need to have a splash screen advertising the fact that they used their own engine.
This area has been placed under quarantine. Entry to and exit from this area are prohibited. Transfer request will not be granted.
Transfer requests will not be granted. Wow. We picked up a thing for selling. There it is. We picked up a credit, a couple of credit chips, and incentive chips. Also, I have no idea what it's called, but Wizards of the Coast has developed 2 engines at this point, although I don't know if you would call the one used for Magic Online really an engine, but definitely the one for Magic Arena. Wait, Amazon has a game development team? Of all the major companies out there, that I definitely would not have expected Amazon to have their own engine.
Cheers.
Or is it primarily a mobile engine? Because that would actually make a lot of sense.
Ball in the wrist. Ball in the wrist.
I hear that's a lot, really common as well. Not just companies licensing out, or licensing not whole engines, but parts of engines, but if they can buy the rights to part of an engine, then they can just incorporate it into their... Well, alright then. Do they have any big hits? Or is it... Or do they mostly just do, support commissions? Well, we should probably get rid of these predators. Alright, so that means they probably just do a lot of contracting work then. For now. I mean, that was a big thing, especially back in... I don't know how big it is these days. Have they not gotten the memo yet that... I mean, MOBAs aren't dead, but they're not the in thing anymore. Actually, a lot of early game companies that we know of today, that are still around today, started off not even making games. Like Square started off as just a software support team for businesses in Japan. Yeah, you wouldn't hear about them.
We'll see who's left standing.
Unless, of course, you pay attention to the not even the splash screens, the credits at the end of the game. That's where all of those teams are going to be located. But no one at Square at the time, it was Square Software. None of them wanted to do support for other companies' softwares. So, like, they kept on trying to convince the managers that they wanted to make a game, and then they made a couple of games, but they weren't really taking off. So then they were just considering, instead of making our own games, we'll just do contracting work for other games. And then there's that apocryphal story that Final Fantasy got made because it was like their last-ditch effort as a company. Otherwise, they were going to go bankrupt. That's not true. They weren't going to go bankrupt. It was the last-ditch effort of them making their own games. If Final Fantasy hadn't been successful, they would have continued to being a contracting company for probably a while before going into making their own game again. It probably wasn't going to be the end forever. But the story became apocryphal by people changing it from the company was going out of business to the company wasn't going to make a game for a while. Their own game for a while. Which is still a big deal. Especially for a smaller company like Squaresoft was at the time. I don't really know Nintendo's history. I know that they had a big hit with Jumpman. They had a big hit with Donkey Kong. And then there was Jumpman, which was, if you guys recall in Mario 3, the sewer level where Mario and Luigi would have to jump on enemies and bounce each other, and the first person to lose X number of lives. That was Jumpman. In Japan, at least. And then that was a success on arcade cabinets. So then they...
Let's get moving.
Made Super Mario Brothers. Nintendo? That does not surprise me. Considering some of the things that they would later go on to do marketing-wise, that does not surprise me one bit. Alright, Mr. Lodestar Behemoth. We've had this fight before. Let's do this. I am slightly stronger now than I was then. Although, Lightning, you really need to move. You're gonna get hit, too. Huh. Were you able to visit their HQ on your trip to Japan? I don't remember you talking about it, so I'm guessing not. That would have been a pretty big thing, I'm sure. Well, there goes that fight.
Sorry, Vanille.
Yeah, I figured you would have mentioned something like that. Alright, well. Ah. It would make sense that their I would expect their HQ to be in Tokyo, but Kyoto also makes sense, and I'm sure the rent in Kyoto is way cheaper for their offices than it would be in Tokyo. Oh, a few days? Only a few days? I would have expected it to be a week long. Because then they have the not only the New Year's celebrations, there's the New Year's festivals the day after. And then there's the second day after the New Year. There's a big day where everyone goes to shrines. At least that's what I recall from my Japanese studies. Yeah. Yeah, it's a big... Like, we think it's kind of a big deal here. Pfft. It's nothing. Yeah, this is not. War and Peace. Lifeguard. You know, Misdirection might be a good one on this enemy after we get rid of the rocket launcher guy. Honestly, the big event that I want to go to... Oh god. Well, not only is it, just generally speaking, is that a big shrine for people to visit, but it's also a massive tourist destination. So... Woo! Bang! You messed up. There we go.
Give it your best shot.
She will slowly heal. And in general, just take less damage. I mean, this is kind of a boring, but very safe strategy.
Appreciate it. No mercy.
All right, let's burn him down. Woo! Barely saved it.
Cheers.
Man, these lodestone behemoths are actually pretty intense enemies. But, you know, it's a behemoth in a Final Fantasy game. They're supposed to be big deals. Also, actually, here's an early thing about video games. It's kind of a trivia thing that not a lot of people knew back in the day, and so a lot of that information didn't really get passed forward, is that back in the early days of the Nintendo, a company could only put out so many games. Nintendo put a limit on how many games a non-Nintendo based company could put out in a year for the Nintendo. So, notably, one company in particular, Konami, split up into a total of 3 different brands, I want to say. I know for sure 2. There was Konami and then Ultra.
All in the wrist.
And Ultra usually put out some of their some of the ideas that they had that were less. It's not that they were not good, it's that they thought they might be less successful. So they didn't want them associated with the Konami brand.
Appreciate it.
One of these games is a little known game that not really many people played, and it was actually exceptionally difficult for the time, but people that were into it were way into it. Like, you think Dark Souls fans are into their game? This game had a following of devotees that was ridiculous. That little game is called Metal Gear. At the time, not very popular. Became a massive success.
This will be quick.
Because of extremely devoted fans. Woo! We really just need a third person to be doing damage while one person tanks up and draws all the aggro and another person heals. And although Feng does not have the most hit points out of all of our sentinels, she does have Meta Guard, which although does not reduce damage as much as Steel,
Bring it on.
whatever it is that Snow has, it also heals and helps reduce damage a little bit. So that's nice.
Let's wrap this up.
Oh man, we are so close to winning this fight. You ladies need to separate from each other. But I have no control over that.
Cheers. All in the wrist.
Almost got him.
Appreciate it.
Almost got him. There we go. Don't have to worry about that fight anymore. Trying to think what other like kind of weird kooky stuff I have to say about kind of the old days of video games in comparison to the new ones. Like, companies were willing just to take more risks in general. Not like big risks, but just more small risks. They were willing to license out, or not license out, but kind of just take people in who had good ideas and wanted to try something. So here's a question, not related to what we were just talking about. Do you think they named him Snow because they gave him ice powers and Shiva? And Snow was actually just a placeholder name, but then when they actually went to write, like, do the voice acting and whatnot, they didn't actually replace the placeholder name? That's my bet.
It must be light.
What makes you think that's has anything to do with light?
Hey,
Why'd you save me?
I was asked to keep you safe. By lightning. And by Nora. I'm sorry. What happened, it was my fault. I put her in danger. I know that.
That's all
Let me
the
make
kid
things
wanted to
right.
hear.
You told me before that you couldn't.
And that words were useless and a lot of other things I shouldn't have said. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to set things straight. So I didn't. I thought if I couldn't make up for it, then all the apologies in the world wouldn't mean a thing. So I decided I had to find a way to pay for it first. Before I'd even have the right to say sorry. But
I mean, that's a noble
it's like you
sentiment,
said,
but
I was using that as an excuse so I could run from my own guilt. And that
but nobility
hit
seldom
home.
gets you anywhere good.
Oh. Look, Hope. I know what happened was my fault. I don't deny it, and I am sorry. Here. That's lights, isn't it?
Why'd you...
That knife was a present from Sarah. To keep her safe.
Yeah, lightning
She
didn't
trusted
need.
you with something that important. You should be the one to carry it. I'll find a way to make things better. Just
Will
give me
you?
time.
Do you have the power to resurrect
Nothing
someone?
I do is good enough. And I'll take any punishment you want to dish out.
She's gone, Snow. You can take the blame, but it won't bring her back.
Yeah. That's very apt and well put.
I knew it all along. I knew it, but... I had to blame someone.
Also, stop leaning
had
back.
to.
You're making this very difficult, and I have a gut injury.
I needed a reason to keep on fighting.
It wasn't someone's fault. It was mine. Take it out on me. And keep yourself alive until you do. I have to keep going.
I want to say Capcom also had to make a secondary company back in the day, but I don't remember what it was called. But there weren't many companies
Look
back
at
on the
that.
regular Nintendo that had to do
You don't even
that
need
sort
any
of
help.
thing.
You're all right. That's good to see. Just let me catch my breath.
It's back, huh? Yes!
Always the hero. You want to die?
That's what heroes do.
Can't. I won't let you.
Also, let's start actually off with Synergist. And then let's do a little bit of Medic. We're doing effectively no damage here. So that's fun. The real question is how long until something different happens. that could have really hurt. Okay, that one really hurt. I will do my best to answer it. Oh, that... Oh, okay, we're supposed to get down to 1. Got it.
Not bad, kid. Where's Snow?
He's okay.
Is he?
Sure you're up to this? Thing'll never know what hit it.
Passingly. That's about the best. Like, not highly, but I am willing to say passingly. If you're going to ask me about which philosopher is my favorite, that I don't actually have an answer to, because I am not familiar enough with their different theories on the human condition to give an accurate telling of how close they are to my own thoughts on the human condition.
Thanks. This'll be fun.
Although, I will say, if you want to know my own takes on this sort of thing, is that creativity is the greatest thing that we have going for us as a people, and that everything else that we do pales in comparison to our creative endeavors. Also, this is what I'm about to say is going to sound kind of callous, but in terms of like what makes humans humans, it's creativity and emotions. That's really about it. And anything that has a sufficient complexity in creativity and emotions can be considered, for lack of a better term, human. Now, what this means for humanity as a whole, like where we're going, that puts like dolphins and some of the smarter breeds of dogs and some of the other great apes and even lesser apes on par with humans.
Thanks.
And I'm okay with that, to be perfectly honest. In terms of our place in the universe, well, the mediocre apes, I mean, we don't really talk about them, and there's a good reason. In terms of our place in the universe, we exist, and that should be good enough for most people. In terms of the meaning of life is to continue the species. Anything else is just fanciful wishing by other people who feel insecure in the universe about their place in the universe, specifically. I know my views seem kind of nihilistic, but they really are hopeful. Creativity is certainly... Like I said, I personally think that creativity is the best thing that we have going for us and should be fostered whenever possible. I also think that Ooh, she got messed up pretty bad. I also think that most people are really insecure, and that is okay. It's okay to be insecure and not know your place in the world. You'll either find it or you won't. And if you don't, that's fine. You'll live your life. Things will be okay. And you will continue to live until you die. Yes. And I believe that the hierarchy is pretty solidly set up to not only facilitate everything that we need, but outside of creativity, creative endeavors, is literally everything that we do as a species. And whatever you take satisfaction in doing, as long as it is not hurting yourself or others, feel free to continue to do so. Oh, the bosses. Most of the bosses are the bosses are the reason, if you want typical Final Fantasy, like, challenging sort of gameplay, the bosses are the only things in this game that really bring that. Like, every once in a while, you'll run across an enemy that has just kind of a weird, like, pattern that you just need to figure out, but once you figure out the pattern, that's it. The bosses are the only things that really have any big differences. Wow, we missed with 2 hits? Damn. And that the only thing that people have done more than die, or as a species, is make babies, so there's nothing special about making babies. Now, they're special to you because they are part of your own legacy and continues on in the world. And as the parents, you have a chemical trigger that goes off when you have a baby that makes you more attached to them as a part of the natural order in order for you to take care of it.
Oh, my.
You'll be okay. I'll keep you safe.
Lightning. Me too. I mean, at least I'll try. I'll try to watch out for you two.
Don't forget about this one.
I definitely have a cynical attitude towards towards the human condition and our place in the world and the universe as a whole.
He's too stubborn to die.
And most people wouldn't agree with me, but whatever.
Knowing you'll always be
They don't have to.
no matter how much has changed. That's what having a home
People are
is
more than
all
free to
about.
come up with their own thoughts about the human condition and society and Alright, well, we need to find a save point. Oh, here's an item. But as a key example of something that I was talking about 3 days ago, we can't go back and grind right now There is literally a gate in front of us. We cannot go back, despite that, like, we beat that boss, but it was probably harder than it should have been. I can't go back and grind because they literally gated me off.
Hope.
Mom's gone.
Is that all you're leading with? Mom's gone. That's it.
Nora.
Dad, I know. I'll be in my room.
So I don't know which psychologist posed this theory, but there's a theory that
We're gonna rest up.
kids see
we'll
their
leave.
parents as gods, and that the
If they
first time
find
they
out you're
see
sheltering
their
Lassie, they'll-
their parents show a real sign of
You're my
weakness,
son. This is your home.
it breaks their world apart, and so that they feel very uncomfortable facing anything that shows the weakness of their parents. I'm probably screwing that up somewhere, but it's kind of an interesting concept.
My son.
And holds true especially for stories. I don't know how well it holds up in reality. Alright, so we are going to call it a night there. I want to thank everybody for coming and hanging out with me. I especially want to thank Kassan, Grim Reaper, Slade, and that is it for participating in chat tonight. Thank you guys very much. Also, I want to just point out... Hey, Henry. How you doing? Did I just pass over your name earlier? Oh my god, I did. I'm so sorry. I feel like a putz now. I'm very sorry, Henry. You did participate in chat as well. Thank you very much. I would like to remind you guys that we have an event coming up on March 31st. It's a Saturday, starting at noon, where we will be having our bonus stream and giveaway, playing Telltale's The Walking Dead: A New Frontier, giving a copy of that away, as well as a copy of Psychonauts and 3 $20 Steam gift cards. So that link takes you to the event page where you can set reminders. I'm going to be saying it pretty much every day up until the event, so don't feel obligated to do so. It's just another way to keep that on the forefront. Anyway, I hope you guys will join me tomorrow for more Final Fantasy 13. Hope you guys have a wonderful night and a wonderful Friday. Have a good night.